What ifs? We're on chapter 14 of this tonight. It's been a very fun and I think a very rewarding game because it lets us talk about all the hypotheticals without actually attaching our predictions to any of them. Here's one, just for good measure to start off tonight. Hugh Freeze is at Auburn now, for those of you who have been in the woods. And Bobby Petrino, if you've been in the woods, this is really going to blow your mind. Bobby Petrino is the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M now. Well, Ryan hit us up and he said, what if the new heels of the SEC, Hugh Freeze and Bobby Petrino, are highly successful in year one of their current roles? Heels just means a bad guy, for those of you who are unwashed in the terminology of professional wrestling. I know he said Hugh Freeze and Bobby Petrino, but really this is ultimately a Hugh Freeze, Jimbo Fisher thing. Because, I mean, that's who's going to get credit if Bobby Petrino's experiment out there works out. So if Auburn succeeds with an over-under win total of 7, does that mean they won 7 games? Does it mean they won 8 games? Are we even talking just about this year? I'm going to, for the sake of argument, say let's talk about this year. Well, if they're finishing north of 7 wins, you've got the immediate follow-up question. Whomst did it come at the expense of? Who'd they upset? They play each other in week 4, by the way, so it's a mathematical certainty someone's going to lose that day. I mean, did Auburn clip Georgia in week 5? Georgia's first big road game? Who knows? Did they take they got a bye week before they go to LSU, so did they take LSU down? Like, there's got to be some landmark signature upset if Hugh Freeze is to just pop on the national radar this year. And as for Bobby Petrino, like I said, his success will ultimately be credited to Jimbo Fisher, which I got no problem with. I mean, Steve Sarkisian's credit got attributed to Nick Saban a couple of years ago, and he had one of the best years a coordinator's ever had. So casuals will walk away saying that I predicted Petrino to be the next Sark. I will say this. I got no problem with heels in college football. I'm not going to try and convince you to like either one of these guys. For all you know, I don't even like them. Or maybe I do. I would not like to commit on the record with either side of that tonight. But I will say if they succeed, someone's got to take the L's in the SEC West because they're both in the same division. And that could shake up far more than just Auburn and Texas A&M is my point. So the whole what if here, I know it's centered on those guys. I look well beyond those guys. But I think we said this last week, I do think Hugh Freeze and Jimbo Fisher are two of the most important figures in this conference this year for reasons I just detailed. Next up, now this is kind of a spider web, so follow me. Football in the Boot hit us up and said, what if Ohio State loses to Notre Dame and Penn State, but they beat Michigan at the end of the year and win the Big Ten? So here's what this picture would look like. Ohio State's 11-2, and they're a conference champ. Michigan is 11-1, but they lost to Ohio State. Penn State is 11-1, but they lost to Michigan. I don't even pretend to know what the Big Ten tiebreaker is, but I'm going to take his word for it that Ohio State, because of the tiebreaker, and because only one of those 2 losses is a conference game, Ohio State goes to the Big Ten title game. They win it. So the conference champs got 2 losses. There's no way Michigan's going to the playoff with a loss. If that loss is to Ohio State, their schedule's garbage otherwise. And Penn State, being 11-1 with a loss to Michigan, means they beat Ohio State on the road in Columbus. I think Penn State may make the playoff. If that were to hold, I think Penn State may make the playoff, which will be sweet redemption for them because a handful of Penn State fans, and by that I mean a majority of the fan base, still think they got screwed in 2016 when Ohio State, I think it was 2016 when Ohio State went over them. This would be of maximum impact to James Franklin. Look, really, whether the guy goes to the playoff or not, he goes 11-1 this year, and he beats Ohio State and Columbus. That's a really big deal. And if he goes 11-1, chances are he's in the playoff, I think. And also Ryan Day. Now, you want to talk about fun. You want to talk about the time in the show that we should bring the alien down here. We teleport the alien down here, and he's like, good to see you. And we say, hey, no time to talk. Welcome back. So this guy here, Ryan Day, he's won more games than like anyone out there, this side of Smart and Saban. But people are putting him on the hot seat. That question is translated to, what kind of people? Casuals. And I don't have time to explain what that is to you, alien, but you need to know what they demanded of him is he not lose to Michigan again. And look at the result over there. He beat Michigan, but he didn't beat Marcus Freeman. He didn't beat James Franklin, but he won the Big Ten championship. So I'm told the guy needs to win the Big Ten. He needs to beat Michigan in the process. He did both of those things, but he lost 2 games. What do we think about it, alien? And the alien looks as confused as I would look and as confused as many of you would look. What is our reaction there? Loses 2 games, but does both the things you claim he needs to do, but doesn't probably make the playoff. You're talking about therapy sessions in the Buckeye state. I guess it would come down to, I don't know what it would come down to, actually. So let's just wait and see if it happens. Oh, by the way, if you actually predict that to happen and it comes to fruition, I'm sending you a chalice of supremacy. Next up, this would be a disaster. This would be a crisis, the likes of which they haven't seen in the South in a long, long time. Don't freak out. It's just a what if. What if no SEC team makes the playoff? They would have to shut the South down until they got the National Guard in here. They would just have to shut the South down if that happened. It's never happened. I don't think it ever will happen. Certainly it won't happen in the expanded playoff era. But if the 4-team playoff era goes out with the bang of locking the SEC out and bolting the door, you would have a strength of schedule fight in this sport like you've never seen before. Because I don't care if they totally cannibalize themselves. There's going to be at least one SEC team that thinks they're one of the best 4 and most deserving 4 in the country. And if the committee doesn't agree, the argument is going to be, we beat ourselves up. Now, the Pac-12 gets to make that argument this year, but no one will care. A lot of good teams out there. None of them may escape with fewer than 1 or 2 losses. But when the SEC makes that argument, you know, as well as I know, that gets benefit of the doubt. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because I make the argument on this show. And I would probably make the argument again. Like if LSU wins the SEC with 2 losses and they're not in the college football playoff, I imagine I'd have a strong take on it. I would have to see the surroundings, but I imagine I would have a pretty strong take on that. I looked this up today. We've had 9 years of playoffs. You know how many SEC teams we've had in there? We've had 14 of them in 9 years. Stats and Info's on vacation, so I had to look it up myself. I hope it's right. There's obviously been some years where we had 2 of them. So, none? What a crisis. I think a lot more people would embrace the expanded playoff. Not me necessarily, but maybe some holdouts in the South would embrace the expanded playoff. And last up tonight in the what if department. We're getting very geographical here. Keegan said, no one has the courage to ask, what if Drew Aller is the best quarterback on the east side of the Mississippi River? I'm giving you guys time to pull up Google Maps. You should have this memorized like I did by kindergarten, but if you don't, the Mississippi, it's a pretty famous river. Charlie Pride has a really, really good song about the Mississippi River. I encourage all of you to look it up after the show. In the meantime, I want to remind you, Jaden Daniels, by inches, is east of the Mississippi River. Jordan Travis at Florida State, he's east of the Mississippi. Drake May, North Carolina. J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. Sam Hartman at Notre Dame. All these guys are east of the Mississippi. And our guy Keegan just pulls the pin on the grenade and tosses it in and says, nah, Drew Aller, first year starting, going to be better than all of them. Now, I think he's a really good player. Well, I think he's going to be a really good player. He hasn't had the chance to prove that to you yet. I think he will be. This is lofty, though. Very lofty. So what if that happens, since that's the game we're playing? Well, Penn State's going to the playoff if that happens. I don't have much doubt about that because there's really not much else on that team that would keep them out of that. I mean, also, remember this now. If that guy really is the best quarterback east of the Mississippi this year, there's the rare Penn pop, east of the Mississippi this year, well, Michigan's got to go in there with a guy who is runner-up to Drew Aller in this scenario. He is going to go into Columbus, Ohio, and be the best quarterback on the field that day. They got a really good defense. They got horses in the backfield at running back. I think this would mean that wide receiver worked out okay for him. I have less than 0. I got almost 0 questions about their offensive line. They're going to be a playoff team. I don't know what else to tell you. In fact, Aller doesn't even have to be quite the best. Aller could play just really good football this year, and they could push for a playoff spot. They're going to be a really good team. I mean, we didn't just waste time going up there and doing an entire live show from James Franklin's balcony for them to go 7-6. All due respect to 7-win teams out there, but there's a reason we went up there. And so, yeah, I think Penn State will win the Big Ten there.